Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington TTouch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and this is an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And today we're going to continue our talks about different modalities and their role in end-of-life and hospice issues with your pets. And today we're going to talk about TTouch. And as you know, if you watched the earlier videos, there's about 50 of them about TTouch, like numbers 15 to 60 or 70 of Conversations with a Corgi are all about TTouch. So I'm not going to go into great detail about how to do that today, but I'm going to just show you which ones might be useful for end-of-life issues and hospice care. And TTouch, of course, comes from the work of the brilliant animal expert Linda Tellington-Jones, who I've worked with for really many years now, for almost 40 years. And in fact, when I look at all the time I've spent with her, it totals more than a year of my life that I've spent directly working with Linda. So I am deeply appreciative of her work and the impact it's had on the lives of many people and animals. So one of the things that becomes an issue with end of life and with hospice is pain. And that's one reason you'll need to involve your vet, but it's also something that's very upsetting for you to have to see or worry that your pet might be in pain. So some of the TTouches that are super useful for that are the TTouches around the ears and the mouth. And part of that is because when you're in pain, you're in that stress response of the sympathetic nervous system. And these particular touches help rebalance that sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system so that you've got more of a balance between stress and rest digest. So what you might do is just some of these circular TTouches. Remember, they're a circle and a quarter, and you're connecting with the skin and making that circle and a quarter around the face of a clock that you imagine as you're doing it. And just doing these circular TTouches around the base of the ear. This is what my hand is doing. Circle and a quarter. Circle and a quarter. Notice my pinky is connected with my other fingers. Notice my hand is shaped a little bit like a paw. And notice that all the fingers are following mostly the middle finger as I make that circle and a quarter. And it's not rubbing like this. It's making a connection and moving the skin. So I'm doing that circle and a quarter around the base of the ears. And the other great thing about TTouch for end-of-life and hospice issues is that it can really help relax you to be doing this with your pet. And if you have more than one pet and other pets in the household, you can do this on them if you're too nervous about working with the pet that might be in hospice care or dealing with end-of-life issues. So just doing a few of those circles around the base of the ears. Tristan really likes these. He's got a lot of fluff in there. It's very fun to do it. So you're going to do that around the base of the ear. Around the base of the ear is the triple heater meridian from acupuncture, which is for digestion, respiration, and reproduction. And don't forget, we neuter our animals for the most part, and so it's important to work with that idea of reproduction because we have altered their life course with that, with neutering them. So, and then you can also do what we call ear slides, where you just put some fingers or your thumb inside the ear and just gently slide it up to the end, and don't let the end whip back. Just hold it gently and let it relax out of your hand very carefully. If your dog's ears go down, sorry, Biss, you just go in the down direction. And every dog has velvet soft ears, so this is really fun to do with them. See, it's very relaxing to Tristan. Right? He says, I didn't know I was getting TTouch this morning. And then you can also, remember there's an acupuncture point at the end of the ear for shock, but that's also a good one to use for stress and regulating blood pressure and things like that, which might be high when your animal might be in pain. And you can only give so much pain medication to a person or an animal, and you have to wait a certain amount of time in between. And of course, as we've talked about, homeopathy and the use of Traumeel can be really great for pain. Also, you can get tea relief or arnica pills. But in the meantime, this ear work can get your dog through to the next time he can get some serious drugs if he is in pain. And generally, that's not the case. Generally, they're not in pain. because if they were in a lot of pain, you might have made a different choice with what to do with them. And the things that cause pain are often diseases where there is a very unfortunate end arriving, like something like kidney disease. And so you probably would choose to put your animal down rather than put him in hospice care, or put him in hospice up to a point. So in that case, this ear TTouch is really good. And you can do these same circular touches, here, Beth, around their mouth. The mouth has a direct connection to the emotional center of the brain, so the mouth work can be really useful. If your pet doesn't like this and you're really dealing with end-of-life stuff, I would not work so much around their mouth as their ears. But a lot of times this is a relief, because animals might not have been able to eat much at the end of their lives, and so doing a little bit of mouth work can actually be quite comforting. And now I'm using just the whole flat of my hand to do these circles instead of just my fingers like this, because it does move his whole face, which he seems to like more. And then some of those ear slides. Other comforting touches that we've already talked about that are great for these kinds of situations are the Noah's March, where you're just lightly rubbing over the entire body of the dog and thinking of a picture of their body as you do this. The hair slides, if you've got one with hair like I do, you just grab a little clump and just slide gently to the end. This was really comforting for Comet. He really liked the hair slides near the end of his life. And you can do those hair slides around their face. And if you're working with a horse, this is really great on their mane and their forelock. Because remember, the forelock is over the third eye chakra, or the crown chakra, and that's going to be one of the last parts of the horse that is still with us on the earth plane. So working with the forelock can be really comforting if you're putting your horse into a hospice situation, or if you are waiting for the vet at the barn for an hour or two at the end of his life. You can do these hair slides on the tail if you've got a collie or something with a nice fluffy tail, even a Labrador with the little short hairs like he has. You can do them on either side, going down the tail like this. And those are very comforting as well. Depending on your pet, if your animal has been used to having his feet touched and having his feet worked with, doing some little gentle TTouches on the pad and the foot can be also good, because that's the emotional part of the brain is connected to the foot. If your dog has not liked having his feet on, this is not the time to decide to do TTouch on his feet. But if you were going to do TTouch on his feet, sorry, Bissy, he's really struggling to balance on my lap. Give me a paw, please. And he doesn't like to stand on that other one. So I have his paw. I would hold it better than I am, but I want you to see. Just doing these little gentle TTouches on the base of the paw like this. Because remember, a dog in hospice care probably hasn't been walking around that much. Oh, I know. And so giving a little stimulation to the pads of the feet can be comforting. Again, Comet really liked that. And he had not been a dog who loved having his feet worked with, and I had done so much TTouch with him to get him to be able to accept a little bit of nail trimming, and he was always fine with the fluff trimming between his pads. But when he was near the end of his life, really the last week or two, he really liked having circles on the bottom of his pads of his front and his back feet. Now remember, he died from DM, which is a kind of paralysis like human ALS, and so he really couldn't feel anything in his back feet, or so they say. And by the time he was leaving the earth, he really couldn't feel much in his front legs. But I think just that pressure of, pressure is on a different set of nerves. So just going up into your dog's body like this with the pressure on the bottom of his foot gives stimulation to parts of their body that they might not be using if they're not walking. Comet never used his cart very well, if at all. And so, once his back end was gone, he didn't have this kind of proprioception coming up through his body like this, through the bottom of his foot. So he really cherished his footwork with TTouch at that point in his life. And it's a really nice thing to combine some of the tuning fork work with the TTouch work if you happen to have some angel tuners. And again, with massage, doing this whole body connection work. And TTouch is a really wonderful gift that you can give your pet during that time of crossing the rainbow bridge. If you've got a fluffier dog than I do, like a collie or something, you can do these hair slides on the top of their head, which they really like. I can kind of do it here. His fuzz is maybe an inch long here. You can barely get a little hold of it here. Hospice. And the other important thing about TTouch for end-of-life issues, remember the intention with Tellington TTouch work is to have the cells, ask the cells, or remind the cells to remember their potential for ideal perfection and ideal function, and their potential for perfection and ideal. What did I say? I said that wrong. To remember their potential for ideal function and to remember their perfection. So these two ideas are really helpful for end-of-life issues, because a dog like Comet, he spent his whole life running around doing stuff, and then suddenly for a couple of years with DM, he wasn't doing that. So just cherishing those memories of his prior times while I was doing the TTouch was really useful for him. And certainly with any horse I've worked with, the TTouches have been really helpful. And that's also true for animals after they've crossed the rainbow bridge. I've done TTouches on a lot of animals that were quote unquote gone, particularly around their head and their crown chakra, just to help ease that passage for them. Oh, Lucky's feeling better today. Yay. I hope you got to do some TTouch on him. Maybe just the rest helps too. And don't forget those T-Relief, which are Tromiel pills, are really useful for things like slipping in the snow and sprains and strains. And I always keep them in my house because I don't like giving my dogs real drugs if I can avoid it. And something homeopathic like that is really good for pain. And you can just give them like you would an aspirin every 4 hours or one morning and one night. And certainly for a lot of seniors, that's a great situation. Right, Biss? So go back and review some of the early conversations with a Corgi about Tellington TTouch if you do have an animal with end-of-life issues approaching, or that's in hospice care if you work with animals in that situation. I'll never forget a touching story a woman told us in a class, and she was from North Carolina, so she had a sweet Southern accent, and I've lost touch with her. I don't know where she is, and I can't even remember her name. But she worked in shelters almost exclusively, doing TTouch with dogs and cats. And, in the South, it's very difficult situations in shelters. They don't have enough money. They have way too many dogs. It's just a whole different experience than what lots of us see in other parts of the country. And when she would walk into the shelter to do her work, she was only able to stay a couple of hours, but how many animals could she work with? So she would always be in this emotional upheaval about not being able to touch every animal. And so what she did, and her story was so lovely, she would walk down the row of cages and just in the air do a circle and a quarter and think about that special dog that was in that cage, or the cat, for that moment, and just give her all of her compassion and love and thought. And as she would go down through the corridor of kennels, they would get quiet one by one after she gave them that little bit of attention. So think how powerful this is for an animal with end-of-life issues. If you are a vet tech or a vet and you are working in an office where you do have to put animals down sometimes, just doing that one TTouch circle on, I recommend the crown chakra, but it might just be in the air with the dog or on their paw after they've passed, can be really, really profound. And so it's a real benefit if you can do that for an animal. And that also stands true for those you see that have been hit by a car in the road and are gone. Sometimes I've gotten out of the car with one that didn't look quite like he was gone and done a couple of circles in the air and said a little prayer for him. And I've just seen him just take his last breath and expire in that moment. So you really have a lot to offer the world with doing TTouch circles, and only one circle can make a huge difference. So it's a really important part of hospice and end-of-life care, I believe. And again, another reminder that it's really beneficial for you to be doing it for your pet as well, because it slows your breathing, it deepens your connection with the animal. And that is one of the gifts of hospice care for a pet, is deepening that connection you have with your animal in his time of leaving the earth plane. So enjoy your time reviewing the TTouch videos on YouTube. They're all there. And I would go right to the first ones on clouded and lying leopard, because those are the ones that you're going to use the most in the hair slides. And there's certainly a few on ear work and mouth work as well that you can check out specifically. So thanks for joining us for this episode of Conversations with a Corgi. Like I said yesterday, we are going to be at the TED Talks tomorrow morning around 9. And I usually do this at 9:30, so and it takes about a half an hour to get there. So I don't know if I will try to squeeze something in before I go or try to do something from there. It would be great if I could find somebody to interview. It's really an exciting time when you're doing a TED Talk. And, honestly, how many of us have ever heard a TED Talk that wasn't good? Some are fabulous, but, they're all interesting. Listening to people's stories, I think, is fascinating to every one of us. And so hopefully I can find somebody to talk to. Otherwise, I'll see you on Sunday. Well, I can't read the whole comment about the TTouch video, but check them out. There's one for every type of TTouch, and then there's several on different harnesses, groundwork, all the things we do with TTouch. Thanks for joining us. I hope Lucky continues to feel better. We'll see you all soon. Have a great day.